Hello and welcome to DuckTales Character Comparison, where I compare a character from the original series to its 2017 counterpart. How are they the same? How are they different? And which version is better? In today's video, I'm going to talk about Mrs. Beakley's granddaughter and Scrooge's adopted niece, Webby. Appearance. There really isn't a lot of similarities with Webby's appearance. Both versions have a bow in their hair, and they wear pink. That's it. The 87 Webby has a large pink bow on the top of her head that's attached to a ribbon that wraps around her head. She also wears a pink short sleeve shirt and has long eyelashes. The 2017 Webby has a small pink bow located on the right side of her head, wears a light pink long sleeve shirt, blue vest, and a purple skirt. She also has no eyelashes. Another key difference in their appearance is their hair. The 87 Webby has feathers in the back of her head stick out, while the reboot Webby has a bob cut going for her. The 87 Webby often carried her Quacky Patch doll, while the reboot Webby often carried a grappling hook. To put it simply, the 87 Webby looks like a cute little girl, while the reboot Webby looks like a normal girl with strange interest. This leads me to their personality. Although Webby isn't quite the same character in either show, there are some similarities. Both are kind, caring, naive, and have a strong sense of justice. To highlight how different they are, let's start by talking about the moment they meet Huey, Dewey, and Louie. In the original series, Webby first met the boys when their grandma, Mrs. Beakley, was hired to be their nanny. The boys don't take to her right away. In fact, they're disgusted by the idea of being around a girl. At first, the boys want nothing to do with her. They even pulled pranks on poor Webby. Over time, Huey, Dewey, and Louie warmed up to her. In the reboot, the boys had escaped from a locked room when they were captured and interrogated by Webby. At first, she assumed they had been sent by one of Scrooge's enemies, like Glomgold. After learning who they are, Webby is excited. She had studied the McDuck family her entire life and is happy to meet Scrooge's nephews. Webby then awkwardly asks, "Are they friends now?" They only say yes because they're kind of freaked out by her. Like in the original series, Huey, Dewey, and Louie warm up to her. This meeting establishes a key difference in Webby's personality. In the original series, Webby is more girly. She loves to have tea parties with her stuffed animals and play with her dolls. Even though the boys warmed up to her, they often don't want to be around her because of her girly nature. She also seems to be younger than the boys. Because she is much younger than the boys, Webby at times can be naive. Whereas, in the reboot, Webby is adventurous. While the original Webby did love to tag along on adventures, reboot Webby lives for adventure. She spent her whole life being trained by her grandma, Mrs. Beakley. Despite this, Webby never actually went on an adventure until she met the boys. This was due to Mrs. Beakley's overprotective nature. Webby spent her whole life inside Scrooge's mansion. Webby in the original series was naive because she was young and innocent. Webby in the reboot is naive because she was kept from the outside world. She doesn't know how to talk to other people, nor how to have fun like a normal kid. Whenever she plays with the boys, Webby often gets way too intense. Like she's having trouble separating fantasy from reality. Original Webby never had this problem. In fact, she was often more gentle than the boys. Throughout the reboot, we see Webby slowly get out of her shell. She even developed friendships with people outside the McDuck or Duck family, such as Lena and Violet. The original Webby never seemed like she had her own set of friends. At least none that became recurrent characters. Role on the show. Webby's basic role remains the same in both shows. She is like the sister Huey, Dewey, and Louie never had, Scrooge's adopted niece, and Mrs. Beakley's granddaughter. They also often go on adventures, often against the wishes of Scrooge and Mrs. Beakley. The original Webby was more like a kid sister. This sometimes caused her to get ignored by the others, much to her annoyance. Some viewers only see her as a worthless tag-along. Even hardcore fans of the original DuckTales tend to see her this way. I always found this to be an unfair assessment of Webby. She was often helpful on their adventures. Perhaps the best example of this is in the episode Luck of the Ducks. Scrooge thought Webby was wasting her time being nice to a leprechaun. It turns out that this leprechaun helped save Scrooge only because Webby was nice to him. In the reboot, Webby has skills other than her kindness. She is skilled in combat, stealth, traps, interrogation, and has a vast knowledge of the McDuck family and myths. This makes her helpful when it comes to solving mysteries, like what happened to Della Duck. Webby is a bit of a mystery herself, but I'll get to that later. While both versions of Webby live at the McDuck mansion with her grandma Mrs. Beakley, how long they live there is different. In the original, Webby and Mrs. Beakley moved into the mansion after Huey, Dewey, and Louie. Mrs. Beakley was hired to be their nanny, and her only condition was room and board for herself and Webby. We never learn about Webby's life before moving in with Scrooge. We never find out what happened to her parents. In the reboot, Webby had lived with Scrooge her whole life. This allowed her to learn all she can about the family tree. It is through Webby that Huey, Dewey, and Louie learn what an interesting family they have. Out of all the nephews, Webby in the reboot seemed to be the closest to Dewey. The original Webby was close to all three equally. Now for the part I'm sure all of you have been waiting for. Her relationship with Scrooge. Even though she isn't his niece, Scrooge allows her to call him uncle. This shows he considers Webby family even though she isn't. The difference is when he allowed it. In the original, it was not long after she moved in, whereas in the reboot, it was years later. Scrooge didn't seem to pay much attention to Webby until Mrs. Beakley was kidnapped by Black Heron. He was too caught up in business and his own grief over losing Della. Unlike the original, the reboot Webby never took this personal. She seemed to understand he's a busy duck. The moment he allowed her to call him uncle is perhaps one of the sweetest moments in either show. There was, however, one moment in the reboot where during a heated argument, Scrooge told her she isn't family. This is the most hurtful thing he ever said to her. Scrooge never said that to Webby in the original show, no matter how mad he got. What makes this especially hurtful is for two reasons. One, Webby idolizes Scrooge in the reboot. In the original show, Webby loved Scrooge like an uncle. But reboot Webby worships the ground he walks on. Just when they were growing closer, he basically pushes her away. And two, it turns out she is family, since Webby is Scrooge's daughter. Bradford Buzzard needed a mystical artifact called the Papyrus of Binding. However, Scrooge made it so that only the rightful heir of McDuck could get it. So Bradford had Black Heron create a clone of Scrooge. Thus, April McDuck was born. Mrs. Beakley was tasked with finding the weapon Fowl was developing and destroy it, only to learn that the weapon was baby April. Not wanting her to be used as a weapon for Fowl, Mrs. Beakley took April and raised her as her granddaughter, Webby Vanderquack. From the beginning, Mrs. Beakley lied to Webby about where she came from, causing Webby to feel betrayed upon learning the truth. Basically, Webby's whole reason for existing was to help take out Scrooge, only for Mrs. Beakley to, if you pardon the pun, foul it up. The biggest irony is that Webby ended up admiring Scrooge. This is definitely different from the original DuckTales, where it's safe to assume that Webby is indeed Mrs. Beakley's granddaughter and not a clone of Scrooge in order to destroy him. I find it interesting that the writers chose to make her Mrs. Beakley's foster granddaughter and Scrooge's biological daughter when the reverse was true for the original series. Bradford later had clones of Webby made named May and June. Calling these clones April, May, and June is a clever reference to the fact that the creators of the original DuckTales were inspired by Daisy's nieces when they created Webby. Which one is better? 2017. I honestly don't think Webby in the original series is bad. She is still likable and can be helpful. Having said that, it's hard not to find Webby in the reboot the better character. She is far more interesting and entertaining to watch. Her character arc is one of the most interesting aspects of the show, and she even has her own set of friends. I'm not really sure how I feel about the twist that she's Scrooge's daughter. I don't normally like it when the hero finds out they have a kid they never knew about. I hated it when it was done in Superman Returns and Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. Call me old fashioned, but I don't think fictional heroes should have kids they don't know about. It makes them look like a deadbeat dad. The thing I always found interesting about Webby is that she isn't a blood relative, but she is accepted as part of the family. Was it really necessary to make her Scrooge's biological daughter? One thing I'll give the reboot credit for is that Webby was accepted as part of the family before the twist. Regardless how I feel about it, it still doesn't change the fact that the reboot Webby is better. Thanks for watching. Let me know in the comments section what you guys think, and don't forget to like and subscribe. See you later.